Anastasia Romanov. Finding the Lost Princess. The Princess in the Gilded Cage. On a warm summer day, June 18, 1901, a baby girl was born inside the glittering walls of Peterhof Palace near St. Petersburg, Russia. She was named Anastasia Nikolaevna Romanov, the youngest daughter of Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra Fyodorovna, rulers of the vast Russian Empire and heads of the centuries-old Romanov dynasty. Anastasia was born into a world of splendor. Her childhood was filled with ornate ballrooms, manicured gardens, glittering tiaras, and royal carriages. She shared her world with her three older sisters, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and her younger brother, the Tsarevich Alexei. They were the most photographed children of their time, their innocent faces immortalized in delicate black and white portraits framed by lace and velvet. Yet, behind the grandeur of court life, there was isolation, secrecy, and pain. Alexei, the only male heir to the throne, suffered from hemophilia, a deadly blood disorder that cast a long shadow over the family. Their mother, Empress Alexandra, became consumed with grief and superstition, placing her trust in mystics like Rasputin, whose influence would contribute to the family's downfall. Anastasia, though, was a light in the darkness. Known for her sharp wit, mischievous spirit, and sparkling blue eyes, she was the heart of the family. She played pranks on her tutors, made jokes during official photos, and once famously glued a servant's shoes to the floor. Even as the empire crumbled around her, Anastasia remained vibrant, a spirited teenager trying to cling to normalcy in a world that was falling apart. The empire collapses. By 1917, Russia was a nation on fire. Years of war, poverty, and political unrest had pushed the people to the brink. When the Bolshevik Revolution erupted, Tsar Nicholas II was forced to abdicate. The Romanovs were stripped of their power and moved under house arrest, first to Tobolsk in Siberia, and later to Yekaterinburg, a city far from the elegance of palaces and diamonds. There, in a house ominously named the House of Special Purpose, Anastasia and her family lived as prisoners. Gone were the ballrooms and silken gowns. Now there were boarded windows, armed guards, and meals brought on tin plates. Yet in this grim setting, Anastasia remained a beacon of strength. Witness accounts describe her comforting her siblings, making the guards laugh, and even maintaining her lively humor. A guard once noted how she walked around the yard with her arms outstretched, pretending to fly. But freedom was no longer a possibility. In the early hours of July 17, 1918, the Romanov family was awakened and told to dress. They were led to a small basement room. There, they were read a brief statement, then executed by a firing squad. Or so the story goes. When the bodies were hastily buried in an unmarked grave, chaos prevented proper identification, and one question began to echo across the world. What if Anastasia survived? Rumors and resurrection. In the weeks following the execution, the Bolsheviks tried to keep it a secret. Officially, only Nicholas II was said to have been killed. The fate of the Tsarina and the children was left vague. Whispers began to swirl. Did one or more of the children escape? It didn't take long for rumors to take root, and they spread like wildfire. Peasants spoke of a girl seen fleeing into the woods, wounded but alive. Others claimed she had been rescued by loyal soldiers. By the early 1920s, reports of a surviving Romanov had reached Europe, America, and beyond. Then came the impostors, the woman who claimed to be Anastasia. In 1920, a young woman was pulled from a canal in Berlin after a suicide attempt. She was silent, pale, and emaciated, refusing to reveal her identity. For years, she would remain nameless. Then, in 1922, she whispered a name, Anastasia Romanov. She came to be known as Anna Anderson. Her story captivated the world. She bore a striking resemblance to the Grand Duchess. She knew palace routines, family secrets, and even had a similar limp said to be caused by a childhood injury. Supporters emerged, including former Romanov servants who believed her claim. But others were skeptical. Anastasia's surviving relatives refused to recognize her. Scientists, doctors, and even detectives were brought in. The case went to court in Germany and dragged on for decades, becoming one of the most sensational identity trials of the 20th century. Anna Anderson never backed down. She maintained until her death in 1984 that she was the real Anastasia. Even in her final years, she refused to admit otherwise. But was she? Bones, Truth, and Science. In 1991, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, a grave was found near Yekaterinburg. Inside were the remains of several people, presumed to be the Romanov family. But only 9 bodies were recovered. There should have been 11. The remains of Anastasia and her brother Alexei were missing. For the hopeful, this was proof Anastasia had survived. But DNA testing in the 1990s confirmed that the bodies belonged to Nicholas II, Alexandra, and 3 of their daughters. Scientists matched their DNA with living Romanov relatives. Still, the mystery lingered. Then, in 2007, another discovery, a second grave, just a short distance from the first. Inside were the remains of 2 young individuals. DNA testing concluded, definitively, that they were Anastasia and Alexei. The last 2 missing members of the Romanov family had been found. The legend was finally laid to rest. Why the legend lives on. So if Anastasia died in that basement in 1918, why do we still talk about her more than a century later? Perhaps it's because we wanted to believe that in the darkest night of Russian history, one spark of innocence had escaped. That a girl, so young, so vibrant, could outwit her captors and find freedom. Hollywood embraced the legend. Broadway musicals, animated films, and best-selling novels kept her story alive. In the 1997 animated movie Anastasia, she's portrayed not as a ghost of the past, but as a young woman rediscovering her identity and reclaiming her royal destiny. In truth, Anastasia Romanov died a tragic death, like the rest of her family. But in imagination, she lived on. She became more than a duchess. She became a symbol of hope, of lost royalty, of survival against impossible odds. The girl who refused to be forgotten. The story of Anastasia Romanov is not just about royal bloodlines, fallen empires, or DNA tests. It's about memory. It's about how, even in the absence of certainty, humanity clings to what it wants to believe. For decades, the question, what if she survived, haunted bookshelves, film reels, and dinner table conversations. The face of a young girl with a shy smile and hopeful eyes stood as a monument to a world that once was, an era swept away by war, revolution, and the turning of history's ruthless wheel. We now know the scientific truth. Anastasia died in 1918, a teenager silenced too soon. Her bones rest in a grave not far from where she last stood as a free soul. But the heart doesn't always listen to science. The myth of Anastasia reminds us of our need for justice, for healing, for happy endings, even when reality denies them. Her name became a vessel for mourning not only a family, but an entire culture that vanished in the flames of revolution. Perhaps that is why, long after the Romanovs were gone, Anastasia remained in the world's imagination. Because we weren't just looking for a lost princess. We were looking for closure, for hope, for the belief that somehow, somewhere, innocence could survive even the cruelest of fates. The final resting place. In 1998, exactly 80 years after the family's execution, the remains of Tsar Nicholas II, Empress Alexandra, and 3 of their daughters, including Anastasia, were laid to rest in the Peter and Paul Cathedral in St. Petersburg, the traditional burial site of Russian royalty. In a solemn, state-sponsored ceremony, the Russian Federation acknowledged the injustice done to the Romanovs. Anastasia was finally home, not as a myth, but as herself. A young girl who never ruled, never escaped, but who left behind something far more enduring than a throne. A legend. If this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes in magic, mystery, and the power of memory. Subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from history's forgotten corners. And leave a comment below. Do you believe in legends even when the truth is known? And remember, legends never truly die.